What's going on, everyone? So, obviously, Lakers are expected to pull off some type of trades. A lot of conversation about them being very aggressive. The Lakers are going to be very aggressive on this open market, right? Now, obviously, look, the Lakers have a ton of needs. Center position, you need two centers. You need a clear-cut starting level, and you need a backup center. Beyond that, you need versatile, wings and defense and shooting. And I mean, there's an argument to be made to an extent of kind of like a roster restructure, a roster rehaul. There's been a lot of talks about the Lakers are kind of rebuilding and retooling on the fly. They ended up getting Luka, and it's like, okay, well, now we need to kind of restructure, rebuild this thing around Luka Doncic. So with that being said, right, Lakers have so many needs, and yes, there is the allure of a Nick Claxton, and maybe you could get like a Cam Johnson, and even like Kevin Durant and all these other things, right? Like there is this idea of okay, go get like two top end, high end guys, and then just can you pluck a couple guys in free agency, right? Can you free up your full mid-level exception, right? Can you get a DeAnthony Melton on a prove it deal because he's coming off of injury, right? Can you get even like a Jericho Sims as a backup, right? Like there's options and flexibility there. And look, I think more likely than not, Lakers are probably going to go trade for that center, that clear-cut center, and then if they can try to go get a higher end 3-and-D wing, right? I've seen conversations about, Andrew Wiggins or like a Cam Johnson or, there's options out there on the market. Can you sign a Nickeil Alexander-Walker? Like there's again, options out there on the market. But one of the things that I'm not opposed to for the Lakers, right, is instead of taking, a Rui Hachimura and whatever, Gabe Vincent or a Maxi Kleber or whatever, and going and getting, a Nick Claxton, right? Do you try to turn Rui Hachimura into multiple pieces, right? So is it better for the Lakers to go kind of the depth route, right? And go, okay, well, we can get a Clint Capella and a Jericho Sims if we need to as the center position. Or maybe you're going and getting a cheap, again, if you can get a Daniel Gafford, that's half the cost of a Nick Claxton, right? So you're not giving up as much. So maybe you can go and get a Daniel Gafford without having to give up Rui Hachimura, and then you can turn Rui Hachimura into multiple pieces. Can you find a team that's interested in him? Like a Chicago, right? Chicago Bulls. They're like, man, we could really use a guy like him, right? For the power forward spot. We have an abundance of guards, right? Can you turn, Rui Hachimura into like an Io and something, right? Like to where you're starting to get these complementary pieces, starting to get, this depth rounded out to where you're getting ideally youth and athleticism. Can you find a veteran team that's like, man, we could really use, several of these pieces, like a team, like a Detroit that's like that. They have several young guys that maybe you can come in and take a flyer on, right? To me, I look at the Lakers. Can you find those diamonds in the rough? Can you hit on a couple flyers, right? What I mean is again, DeAnthony Melton, excellent player. I mean, the ideal prototype of what the Lakers need slotted alongside Luka, but he's coming off of, the ACL injury. So, there's questions about is he going to be able to get back, right? He's going to need a prove it deal. Now, is he going to be able to get a prove it deal more than a vet minimum? Possibly. There's teams like Golden State who went and signed him and were looking for him to be a solution. He was great for them. Do they maybe go, okay, well, we'll sign him to $5 million or whatever, right? But point is, can you find those kind of guys that maybe you can hit on, right? Can you bring in a DeAnthony Melton and he's on a great contract, or can you get some of these young guys, right? Can you convince a Zaire Williamson, to the Nets not to sign him? Maybe you can bring him on, right? Because they'd rather have the cap space cleared. And, maybe you can bring him on and he's a flyer, but he's young and athletic and versatile. Maybe you can take a chance, a Day'Ron Sharpe, right? To me, it's instead of going for the higher end guys, right? As far as salary wise goes, but you look at a guy like a Nick Claxton, for example, just using him as an example, right? He's a guy that you're probably you're going to be able to acquire him because of his contract, right? Because it is a higher contract. It does decline each season, but it's a higher contract. He's due multiple years. He still has 70 million or close to it, or 68 million, something like that. over the next 3 years, right? Like you're probably going to be able to get him because you have a team like the Brooklyn Nets that, they want and value expiring contracts because they're trying to kind of clear the deck a little bit, right? And kind of, clean slate, right? So that's kind of the idea. But again, that's a lot of money that you'd have to send out. You'd have to send out multiple guys to go get him, where again, can you maybe turn a Rui Hachimura, get that depth, hit on a couple guys in free agency, maybe even kind of have a gap year at the center position, right? To where again, you're going with the Clint Capella and a Jericho Sims. I'll just stick with that, right? Boom. Now you got your center position locked up. But again, maybe you can go get a DeAnthony Melton and free up your full mid-level exception and get in Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Now you got two defensive 3-and-D style guards that can play the point or the two, right? Defend 1 through 3. And then again, maybe you're, trading for 2 or 3 young guys, 2 or 3 prove-it deal guys, right? That maybe you can turn Rui and his $18 million in salary into multiple guys rather than just one, right? Maybe you're trading for a Daniel Gafford and can you get like a Jaden Hardy, right? Boom, there you go. Now you got a center and you got a 3-and-D style guard, point of attack guard, kind of like a Max Christie type that can kind of slot in and play that role. I like the idea of the depth. Obviously, depends on what's available. It depends on, the cost of guys and whatnot. But you're going to have a lot of teams that are going to want to get off of certain guys or kind of hit, clean slate, and, teams that are going to value the expiring contracts and look at, X, Y, and Z to kind of put themselves in a position that maybe the Lakers can take advantage of. I've even talked about these other trades, right? Kevin Durant. Instead of us going and trading for Kevin Durant, can we maybe be a 3rd or 4th team in that trade, right? To where maybe we're able to pick off a couple pieces that make sense for the Lakers, right? Or a Giannis trade if he goes to, a team like Houston or something, right? Like maybe we can get a couple pieces off of Houston. Maybe we can get a couple, guys, some young guys, right? Like, hey, instead of you taking Cam Whitmore, we'll take Cam Whitmore and we'll give you, an expiring contract because he's going to need a new contract soon. Do you really want to pay him a ton? Or, we'll give you a pick swap or whatever so you have more assets, right? Like, point is like maybe you can, again, kind of get involved in some of these deals and you get some of these teams that would rather have expirings to where you might be able to get a guy that you wouldn't have been able to get otherwise, that now you got that guy. You get what I'm saying? Like Lakers need to be creative. You got to get creative. And I do think that that's an option in which the Lakers could end up getting creative enough to, kind of go the depth route, right? You look at a team like OKC, look at a team like Indiana. 2 teams that had a ton of depth that were able to just kind of send waves. Maybe the Lakers kind of put themselves in that position. I mean, you already got the 2 stars, right? You just need to round out the roster alongside them. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass a question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. It's me enjoyed these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.